Good evening, everyone. We hope that you're joining us safely and that this is actually working. I'm J. Kent Layton this evening. I'll be your host, and our two co-hosts this evening are my co-authors for On a Sea of Glass and Recreating Titanic and Her Sisters, Tad Fitch and Bill Wormstead. I'm getting confirmation that we're live.
Hi.
Yeah, so go ahead and introduce yourselves, guys, and then we'll talk about what we're going to be doing here.
Hello, everyone. This is Tad Fitch, researcher and author. Welcome, everyone, joining in tonight for this event. A little bit of a surprise for everyone.
Yeah, a little bit of a surprise for us, too. Bill?
This is Bill Wormstead, co-author with Kent and Tad on a Sea of Glass and a couple other books. I'm glad you're with us tonight.
Yeah, it's definitely good to have you here. As you all probably know, the Steam Splendor Network is, let's see, what are we going on now, Tad? 2.5 months?
Yeah, roughly about that. I think it was in October when we launched.
Yeah, mid-October, so about 2.5 months old. And we've been doing some exciting content. We hope all of you have been enjoying that. But this evening has been there's been a real awesome development in the world of Titanic. It's very rare that you get this kind of development, this kind of new moment that the public can share in. So we wanted to share this with all of you directly. We wanted to show you this amazing new, I don't want to call it a game, it's more of an experience, it's more of a historical tool, but it's also very enjoyable as well. The Magellan scans of the Titanic that everyone was so excited about, they heard a lot about a couple of years ago, they've been working on them behind the scenes, and I know there's been a lot of frustration. You know, we can't see it without a watermark. We're only seeing a few stills here and there. A lot of what's been out there has been low resolution, but I think everyone's patience is definitely going to be rewarded here with what we're going to show you tonight. Just within the past couple of days, a virtual experience has been released on Steam. And if you're in the gaming community, you know what Steam is. In fact, if you are on Steam, you probably also have access to the other video game that was put out by some of our team members, and that was Britannic, Patroness of the Mediterranean. But we're here tonight bringing you something that was developed by Magellan, the company that actually went out and did direct scans in 22. And we're going to do what's called a Let's Play. They're very popular on YouTube. And we're actually going to play this game, and we're going to show it to you. And we're doing this with a little bit of historical commentary. You can probably also hear the music that we're listening to in the background. That's from our friends at the White Star Line Quintet. We figured this was a nice way to get started. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to take you on a tour of this game. We highly recommend this game. We can't say enough good about it. And we want to give as much publicity to this game as we possibly can so that anyone with a computer that has the requirements, definitely go to Steam. It's not very expensive. And there's going to be improvements and add-ons over time. Right now, we're only able to explore the bow section of Titanic's wreck. But when we're showing it to you, I want you to keep in mind that this is not just some model that's been thrown together. This is actually the wreck of the Titanic, and it's been turned into a 3D shape, and we can actually zoom around it as if we're piloting ROV. So as you know, if you never had the chance to go to the wreck yourself personally, or if you had a chance and you turned it down and you're thinking about it for the future, you're not sure, this is going to save a lot of time and a lot of worry about safety. And we're actually going to take you on a spin around the ship, and we're going to provide a little historical commentary for what you see. So this evening I'm going to be serving as the r.o.v.pilot, and we're going to be, I will be a little bit quieter than usual because I'll be focused on driving our ROV. And Tad and Bill are going to kind of be my eyes and my mouthpiece, and they're going to relate to everyone in the audience some of the interesting things that we can expect to see. So why don't we get going, guys, and I'll just start driving and you guys can start talking. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Now, this is totally unrehearsed. I want to put a disclaimer out there that our channel is currently not monetized. So you cannot do super chats, and we're not making any profit from this. This is just for educational purposes and for publicity for Magellan. Once our channel is monetized, we will be demonetizing this particular video, so that this is completely just a positive for them. We really wanted to give them a shout out because we're very excited about this. So at this point, I'm going to start, and Tad and Bill, you guys are going to take over so that everyone can have something to listen to.
Those joining in, you'll notice on the bottom right side the sonar image of the bow section, which gives you an idea where the ROV is located right now.
And when we first go in, why don't we go in along the starboard side?
All right. I'm kind of getting
more interesting
the
things there at the sea level, the sand level, than anything else.
And like Ken said, it's worth noting that everything you see is based on Magellan's 3D scans, so this is not something that was created just for a game experience. It's actually a scan of the wreck.
seeing her coming out of the darkness like a ghost ship still gets me every time.
And you can see how deeply embedded the bow is in the mud, just below the anchors.
Kent, do you happen to know where the letters are on this side of the ship?
I know where to look. I've looked extensively on the port side, but I didn't see any sign of them in these scans. But maybe we'll catch them on the starboard side here.
And of course, when they first found the letters on the bow, that was one of the I believe it was one of the French expeditions, and they had actually scrubbed away the rusticles to reveal that.
Do we remember what side they did that on? Was that the port side?
You could see them on both sides in some of the imagery, but that's been a long time, so I don't know if they would be. This is from 2022, these scans.
My goodness, it feels like I'm here.
Well, I'm not seeing anything obvious.
There's one of the ports.
And people will notice the steel plating for the hull, although there's a lot more rustical growth, is still relatively solid and intact looking in this part of the ship, as opposed to the superstructure, which is much degraded.
Absolutely. Much stronger components of the ship.
And you can see one of the railing sections that had broken free and is laying on the ocean floor.
Yeah.
The one that came off the port side got a lot of publicity this year. I know that. You see the way she really knifed into the mud, very much as if she was parting a wave. The same kind of effect, like plowed it up.
We should be coming up on the break in the hull soon, I think.
Yeah, up here are some of the bent plates from that. I know this was something that got a lot of attention back in the early days after the wreck was found. A lot of bizarre theories about internal explosions and things like that.
And really, that's right directly below where the ship angles down. knife's edge of the bow into the mud, and then the rest of it settled down and really buckled on both sides. Much worse on this side than on the port.
Which is interesting. You can see one split there.
Right.
You see it goes around here.
It's more broken up than I thought it was.
It's very bad. I think the main connection between the forecastle and the well deck and the rest of the bow is really the strength deck.
And you can see the plating for the decks that are visible within the break.
Right there, you can see the bend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is where it starts.
And you can see just how angled down it is if you look at the forward edge of the superstructure there, and then look at the cargo cranes, the angle that they're at. It's a much more severe bend and degree than was originally realized shortly after the discovery of the wreck.
I almost want to say it looks like 15 degrees. Something like that, wouldn't you think, Ted? Let's go back down here. Unfortunately, there's not much we can see inside, but we can really get a good view of the opening in the hull.
And you can see just how bent out the shell plating is in that location.
It's incredible. I can't even imagine what it was like when it came in for its landing here. So let's go aft here. Interesting, all the debris down here.
And there's some rather large sized rocks in that location too, from the look of it.
It does appear that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
My goodness.
Probably dug up from the sea bottom when they collided.
Probably. Let me just change the audio controls here. Get a little relief maybe from... There we go.
And music's very intense. That's
Yeah,
one thing.
it is. It is. All right, I've turned that off now. Now we have a little bit better, some deformations in the plating. Looks like it starts down here. This is incredible.
That's the one thing when you're going through this model, it really does feel like you're there.
Yeah. How many times over the years did we hear the or read the story about Ballard's first dive to the wreck in '86 and how he came in at the mud line on the starboard side, and it was just a cliff, a wall right in front of him. You're down here and you really get that impression. Look at that.
It's something to note when you're doing this experience is there are some game elements to it where they have, like, if you go too long, the ROV will run out of battery.
Yes.
Or you can actually crash into things. So it's not just a static drive around. There's that actual gameplay element to get it a little bit more engaging.
There's also some objectives that they built in, which I thought was really awesome, where you get to basically image specific items. There's 5 right now that I found. Maybe I'll show you one of them later if we happen to drive by. I mean, this is just an incredible experience. Here's B deck. The famous view that everyone knows. The A deck windows up forward here are still in place.
And we were talking earlier, Bill, weren't we, about how intact the promenade is on A deck towards the bow, and as you go further aft, it's more deteriorated.
Yeah. Like right here, you can see the remains of the starboard bridge wing. The back of it is to our very left. Right below the RV is the forward end of the bridge wing.
They're very devastated even when they first found the wreck, because that's not just recent deterioration.
Yeah, but it's deteriorated even more since.
Yeah, it's definitely gotten worse.
True.
So this is the forward-looking window of the starboard bridge wing cab. And then when you go up here, it's interesting, you can actually see the aft one is flattened backwards, up against the base of the number 1 davit, which this is quite a find all on its own. When you think about what happened here.
That and also the fact that there's so few davits that are in situ on the wreck, that this one really is one of the only a few of them that are in position they were at on the deck and weren't stripped off during the sinking.
Yeah.
So it really tells a story.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Of course, this is the
davit last would have lowered collapsible C,
which had Bruce Ismay in it. This was a busy davit during the night of the sinking. Of course, it was usually kept in the swung out position, and it was for the emergency lifeboat number 1. This is the forward davit for it. And of course, we know lifeboat number 1 was lowered. What time was that one lowered away at? 105, 110? It's been a while since I looked.
Lifeboat number 1?
Yeah.
105. Well, it started to be lowered at
105.
Yeah. And then it was hung up while being lowered and took quite some time to actually get to the water. They had to chop it free, but yes, that would have been around 105 when they started lowering away.
An interesting part of the story is that it got hung up for quite a while. So then when they finished lowering 1, it was cranked back in, and as Bill mentioned, collapsible C was connected, which of course had Mr. Ismay and Mr. Carter in it, along with so many others. Controversial lifeboat. And then, as you can see here, it was cranked back in again for collapsible A. And that effort was abandoned. So the davit is not over the edge of the ship.
And as you go past the superstructure in this location, there's a substantial and dramatic amount of deterioration in these areas of the bow section compared to even what it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's very noticeable. Of course, thinner metals and not as structurally robust as the hull of the ship itself.
And you can see that there's not much left of the wheelhouse or any of that anymore.
No.
You've got some markers on the floor where you can see where the rooms were, but that's about it. Everything else is gone. Part of the roof is still there. Right now we're over what used to be Captain Smith's quarters.
Yeah. So there is the outline of the wheelhouse.
Yeah. Before we go any farther, why don't you show them what you showed us earlier today, Kent, in the captain's quarters?
Yeah, this received quite a bit of media coverage. Was it this year or last year? Well, 24 or 23. And it's still there. Or at least it was.
You can still see Captain Smith's bathtub. Bits of it.
Yeah.
The ceiling, the deck overhead has collapsed onto it.
And the wall on the other side, on our side of it, is gone.
Yeah.
Nothing left. But the bathtub's still there, for now.
For now.
Yeah, that was misrepresented. Like, some people had talked about it as if it had fallen through the decking, and at this point it's just buried under debris.
Yeah. So all of this was Captain Smith's suite, and then his chart room was up here in the corner. And when the collision happened, it's very likely that he came out through his chart room into the wheelhouse and then out onto the bridge from there, like this. Of course, this here, everyone familiar with Titanic's story knows what this is. Absolutely incredible to think what actually happened here.
But if you stop, just show them the hole in the deck, Kent.
Oh yeah.
Right next to the telemotor. This part of the deck is starting to go.
Yeah. I don't know how much the telemotor weighs, but it may not be in place for much longer, I'm afraid.
When I feel like there was suspicion that one of the illegal expeditions had attempted to remove that, but I don't know if that was ever proven or not.
A lot of rumors, I'm afraid. Some of them very difficult to prove. And of course, there was a door here to go back out into the starboard wing and the open bridge, the bridge wing out here. So it's a very busy spot in those moments of the collision. This is all the open bridge here.
And you can see all the memorial plaques that people have dropped in front. There's quite almost, some people think it's littered almost. There's so many. I'm sure well intended, but there's quite a few of them.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And of course, down here on A deck, there's a very famous photo taken. I think it was was it Jack Odell?
That's kind of what I'm remembering.
And the picture shows him standing overlooking the bow.
Looking across, you can see a sailor. We identified who it was on a sea of glass, I think.
Yes,
and
it was one of the quartermasters.
The ship was Archie Butt.
Yes, yes. And he was overlooking the bow, same exact spot that you see here.
And at this angle, I mean, the glare from the ROV, but you can really see the mast, how it's collapsed down since it was discovered, and the opening is, of course, where the crow's nest would have been.
I'll bring us down. So this is the opening through which they entered the crow's nest. Fleet and Lee came out through that very hatch into the crow's nest when their shift started, and that's, I think, they were the last ones to leave. I have to look that up again. And of course, the bell that they rang when they spotted the iceberg was attached to this mount. It's been recovered. It's on display, or it has been. It's you really get the feel of it when you're down here on the deck. You see the ladders.
And one of the things we noticed is when the wreck was first discovered, the Argo scans from the French and Ballard expedition, that they said you could see the caulk lines where the pine decking had been and rotted away, and that's still there. And these scans are detailed enough, even with the resolution they are in the game, that you can actually see where the wood decking had been.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, that's been identified as one of the portable electric heaters from one of the staterooms.
Mm-hmm.
That object there.
If you're going up this direction, do you want to show them on the starboard side where we saw that piece of the funnel steam pipe embedded?
Yes. Yeah, that's been discussed a lot. This is one of the waste pipes from one of the funnels.
And somebody in the chat had asked if the damage to the bridge wings was due to the funnels, and that's a very good question, because all the witnesses who survived that commented on the direction that the forward funnel fell indicated that was like towards the front and starboard side, not port as sometimes has been stated. And Collapsible B had ended up drifting all the way around to that side of the funnel and nearly got hit by it. And one would have to think there's a good chance this piece of funnel piping was from the forward funnel.
Yeah, it certainly seems logical. In fact, we know, was it Mr. Williams, I believe it was, who had gone into the sea with his son, was crushed by the funnel, and they
Yes.
left from the starboard side. So
That is correct.
I believe from a vantage point around here, is
And the folks-
famous photograph that was taken while the ship was in Southampton.
Yeah, and the forecastle really is the most intact part of the wreck.
Yeah. What's amazing about the game is that there is you look down in these cargo hatches and there's debris down there. It's not just an empty, space. You can't go all the way to the bottom, but definitely it's awesome. That's why we're so excited. I mean, as historians, we've never been able to dive the wreck ourselves, but to actually be able to dive it virtually now through this experience is remarkable. I've only had a few hours of training with this ROV, so you'll have to excuse my flying.
And what really strikes me is when you get up to the bulkheads, is how much thicker the rustical growth is. You really can't see much of the white paint through that anymore. And when the wreck was discovered in 1985, and then when Ballard dove it in 86, you could actually see a lot of the original paint showing through, and there's not nearly as much anymore.
Yeah. A-deck windows here. You can see the broken glass. And this was very thick glass, because you never know when you get hit by a rogue wave or some other incredible force of the sea, and yet some of these panes are intact and some of them are broken.
Why don't we show everyone the thing I identified earlier today about the part of the ship that proves this is Titanic?
Yes, I'll take us there. Will you introduce it?
Excuse me. Up there on the forecastle, you'll see a window, a skylight. That skylight only exists on the Titanic. It did not exist on the Olympic as built. That piece, just all by itself, proves this has to be Titanic, not Olympic.
Yeah.
One of many, many pieces to prove that.
And although it was installed on Olympic in later years, it wasn't there for some time after the sinking. So
no, this
definitely
is Titanic only at this point in time.
Any crewman who was familiar with Olympic and then had been on Titanic, they would have said, wait a minute, something not right there. That was just one of many, many differences between the two.
And the hull number 401 is on quite a few objects that were raised from the wreck over the years on the propellers. I mean, there's no question. One of the dumber theories out there.
Sadly, and there are many when it comes to Titanic, I'm afraid.
When I went to the Titanic exhibit in Seattle last summer, they were exhibiting some deck panels they were taken off the Olympic when the Olympic was scrapped. Those deck panels said 400, not 401.
Yeah. It's a popular theory on social media, but it has no basis in fact. So again, I can't say enough good about this. I don't want to call it a game because it is not. It's an educational tool, it feels. If you look here at these window frames, I believe
that's the chart room.
Yeah, the main chart room.
The main chart room.
Those
as
windows.
Opposed to Captain Smith's chart room.
Yep.
And we go into a lot of detail in Titanic solving the mysteries about the layout of the chart room and why that was important. And they had the chronometers and the magnetic clock
yes.
were all located within there, the chart table. So there was an important location for the operation of the ship.
Yeah. We know that the senior officers were very busy in this chart room right up until around the time of the collision. And that Captain Smith was seen coming and going. Everyone thinks he retired for the night, but it was actually testified that he was seen coming and going from the chart room and areas of the bridge and wheelhouse, even after he had left Lightoller after their 9:30-ish conversation. And here's a couple of davits here on a dual frame.
Mm-hmm.
amazing. They were dismounted and came to rest here. I'll back us up a little bit.
That's part of the officers, the wall of the officers' quarters.
Yeah.
Was there in '86. Ballard got pictures of it.
Wow. Wow. You can also see the slight difference in the angle between these two davits. Even though they're still on the same frame, there's a very slight difference in angle between the two. Something that was reported to us a couple of years ago, I think, in one of our live streams. Isn't that right, Tad?
Yes.
Some people who had some significant access to non-public materials. It's actually disturbing. The front of the officers' quarters is really coming apart here. Very sad.
And that thin metal that comprises the roof and the walls really is not as heavily constructed as the other areas. So that definitely will be the first thing we see completely disintegrate.
Yeah.
Will be these portions.
And it's probably the first officers' quarters, and the chief officers would have been forward of that, but it looks like it's gone.
Yeah. Wild's cabin. And that was the focus of a lot of confusion, actually, about the location of the firearms during the sinking. Murdoch's cabin, Wild's cabin, Lightiller's cabin. It had been Murdoch's to begin with. Lightiller's when he was serving as first officer. And then when Lightiller was demoted, he put all of the firearms into storage cubby and left them for Murdoch. I believe Murdoch's cabin is over here, isn't it, Bill?
On that side, you've got the first one is chief officer, then first, second, third, and fifth, and then sixth. The fourth officer was Boxall. He was over on the starboard side by the captain.
Yeah. In fact, that's where he was when the iceberg was spotted, apparently. And of course, for those familiar with Second Officer Lightiller's story, this is the vent that they were pinned up against. He was pinned up against as the ship sank, right in front of the forward funnel. And collapsible B was also washed around the front of this funnel, from port side to starboard.
Yeah, and that vent used to be much more intact.
And this is the
Funnel.
yeah.
The casing.
Still see the ladder on the inside. Some of the fixtures. Some of the light and air shafts for ventilation on the side. It's just incredible. All right, you gentlemen direct me where to go next.
Do you want to visit D deck on the starboard side and look at what we were looking at earlier today?
Yeah. So, of course, if you were here and you were lowered away in lifeboat number 1, we'll give you the actual lowering experience, and that'll take us to what we were looking at earlier. Kind of have to feel my way through it.
And no pressure.
No pressure. I've only got a couple of hours of practice, so let's see.
Watch out for those air bubbles.
Yeah, it looks like they'll get me. So if you're eye level, sitting in the boat as it's lowered away, this is what you would have seen. Windows on A deck.
There's the overhang.
Yeah. The pipe that was in this space here is now draped just below here, standing vertically. It fell off at some point over the years. So here's C deck, and here's D deck.
Is that the pipe there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can see it hanging down.
My goodness.
Well, one of the things, just to set up what we're going to be looking at here, is that sometimes you have some people that lose perspective as historians and will downplay for a lot of reasons. To support their pet theory or not, whatever, they'll say, well, eyewitnesses aren't accurate or you can't really rely on them. Well, that's true to an extent, but when you have forensic evidence matching what eyewitnesses said, that's the perfect pairing because then you can be certain what was said was true and they support each other.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to be looking at here.
So for those of you who recently watched our documentary on Edwin and Susan Kimball and saw all those beautiful renders by Chris Garcia Walker, saw that they were in cabin D19. That's their porthole right there, the authentic one on the wreck. And then moving forward, that's for D21, the outside stateroom that their, I believe it was called a bivvy style cabin, was wrapped around. And then this is the corridor just outside D21. This is the corridor that actually Mr. Kimball would have stepped out into when he was investigating. See, the porthole glass is broken there. There was reportedly some ice that was actually pushed in through that very window.
And this porthole was reported as broken by eyewitnesses. So
Yeah.
here you're looking at that exact location on the wreck where they said that happened, and that's exactly what we're seeing.
Exactly there. It's incredible. And it just really stunning. I mean, you can see why there was some doubt as to whether you wanted to take this trip in the middle of the night, pitch black, and how scary it might have seemed as you're lowering away. I think the water was just under the E-deck portholes in this vicinity when boat number 1 was lowering away, so you reach the water and look up and that's what you see overhead. What's interesting about that broken porthole is that it means that the iceberg was in very, very close contact with the hull in this area, which is just amazing. Again, can't say enough good about these scans and this experience. Run, don't walk to the store on Steam.
And the fact that they're going to be adding even more material is amazing by itself.
Yeah.
Ken, I think you're a mind reader because I was saying right now we have five minutes of power on the ROV if you wanted to head to the break area, possibly.
I like that plan. This is one of the coolest things I discovered yesterday. I think this is a little surprising for me how far out this bit of hull plating had come. It's really quite jagged.
And that's one of the elements they've built in is that you do run out of power on the ROV, so it's to add a little realism to it.
Yeah.
See the deformations in the hull plating here very clearly.
Yeah. Just blew out like a flat tire. And we'll get a little warning here that the excursion limit has been reached. But the nice thing is we can just squeak our way around the back of the bow. And suddenly we're in boiler room number 2. We know that these boilers were lit at the time of the collision. Standard double-ended boilers. This is the aft end.
You can see how the faces are pressed inward on these.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Maybe we should go up right up over the slope
Yeah.
when we're ready.
Yeah. So these are the famous firing doors, one of the things that helped identify the wreck in 1985 and helped them to see the boilers from boiler number 1 that was boiler room number 1 that was breached in the split. Identified it as Titanic. Now we're coming up over the roof of the lounge and the boat deck.
And you can see the collapsed decks.
Very, very clearly. pancake down this all is. Of course, this little raised platform once had the compass platform on it, and underneath it is the electrolier for the lounge, and there was a lot of ventilation work underneath that. And looking up, a long way up.
Looks like a mountain.
It does.
You can really see how far that's collapsed down.
Yeah. One of the back windows to the gymnasium, all the way up there.
You should show them the gymnasium when we get up that way.
Yeah. What's really cool is you can actually see the edge of the raised roof over the lounge here as distinct from the boat deck. I think that's something that, looking at two-dimensional pictures, sometimes I've had a hard time visualizing. I kind of grew up with it, I kind of have it in my head, but to see it in 3 dimensions is remarkable. This frame here actually had a ventilator on it. I compared it with some photos from Olympic, and I was stunned that I could actually pick out the frame. And that's the back wall of the gymnasium. You can see one of the clamshell lights, and I believe that's a ladder under there. To double check that. Continuing up, this is the ventilator on the back of the number 2 funnel, and this is the gymnasium. This is what's left of the gymnasium. It's very sad.
Yeah, the gymnasium was largely intact when Ballard found the wreck. It's not anymore. It's in bad shape.
Yeah.
And that's not only the roof collapsed, but it's collapsed down into A deck as well.
Yeah. You can see the edge. Very, very
I mean,
bad.
there was equipment still visible through the window. They didn't get an ROV in there, unfortunately, back in '86, but you could see the remains of the electric camel and a few other things that were still in there. Imagine if they had the ROVs they have today.
And I'm standing about where the band would have stood as they played the last pieces of music as the ship sank, coming out of the entrance, which is to our left.
On the starboard side.
We're going to time out. There we go. We've got a dead ROV. It really is remarkable. I'm just going to restart. And again, I'll turn down the music. There we go.
And it's one of those things we do highly recommend this experience, and we're looking forward to kind of seeing what they do with it in the long run. It's a unique way of getting the scans out to the public, where general public can experience it.
Yes, absolutely. Again, we can't say enough good about this. This chat is not monetized. This live stream is not monetized in any way. It never will be. We're going to delist it. This is basically just to give a shout out to Magellan for putting this together. This is exciting, fascinating.
And one thing we would do, kind of as a shameless plug, but if you're enjoying the live stream, if you wouldn't mind clicking on subscribe for Steam and Splendor Network, because we have some very exciting content coming out in this year, and that's a good way to make sure you don't miss it, that you get notified when we post those.
Absolutely. There's the bow coming out of the gloom. Something we didn't show our viewers before.
A couple of people in the chat have said that they're getting the game on Steam. And,
Excellent.
Want to be clear that we have no financial interest in this whatsoever.
No.
So us recommending this, we're not getting kickbacks or any benefits from Magellan by doing that. It's just something that we felt pretty strongly about. That would be a good experience for those that are interested.
Yeah. This is, I know, it's funny, Tess, my wife, she knows when I get really quiet that I'm really intent on something. And yesterday when I found that the game had been released, she was working behind me and I just got really quiet, and she looked over, she's like, "What are you doing?" And it really was, I mean, I'm sitting here at my desk in my office, and yet it's still kind of an emotional experience. This is the ship that we've lived with for a good chunk of our lives, spent so many hours researching, and yet here we are, exploring.
What were those white patches we saw in the hull back there?
I've noticed a lot of these.
Yeah, like right there.
Yeah.
I mean, this is too low on the hull to actually be white paint.
I almost wonder if it's primer showing through. I don't know that for sure. I'm speculating 100% just to be clear.
Well, we know
But
what
I've
the
wondered-
conspiracy theorists would say. But we won't repeat that theory for them.
Yeah.
But, yeah. You can see more of it here, Bill.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So the ship's name on the port side here was between this deadlight and that one there. Not much to see, I'm afraid.
Scrape it with an arm rotator.
I'll get a broom, Bill.
No, it almost looks like an A there. Almost. Right, a little to your left. A little more, right, you're aiming at it right now. That looks
Right
like
there.
an A to me.
There is something there, yeah.
There's
I
something.
see.
Well, we'll keep. Maybe that will be added in at some point. That would be an awesome thing to experience. I'll take us for a flight along the port side here. Unless you guys have something specific you want me to show.
I think that's good with me, unless Bill has something specific.
Well, you earlier we flew across the port deck around where the entrance was, and we saw what little is left. It was pretty bad shape.
It is.
And it's interesting when you're that low and close to the mud line how much cleaner the hull plating is and clear of rust.
Yeah. Of course, this davit, the last known operation was to lower collapsible D, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And just like the testimony shows, there wasn't really an attempt to hook it up to the davits. There wasn't time. Because of the port list, water reached here sooner than it did on the starboard side, and the davit was still cranked out. They didn't have time to crank it back in like they did for collapsible A.
Yeah. And this is where collapsible B came off the roof and landed in the water.
Right there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
We know Harold Bride was in this vicinity and actually stayed with the boat as it went around the front of the number 1 funnel. An incredible and unusual journey that it went over the roof of the bridge in front of the funnel before the funnel came down. And one of the things that we discussed in one of our group chats, I think it was with Don Lynch, early last year, was how few survivors there are from the port side around collapsible B.
Yeah, only a couple.
A lot more from the starboard side with A. You can see the deck beginning to bow down there in the distance at the expansion joint. My goodness.
Do you want to go up to the roof and look at the Marconi skylight?
Absolutely.
And this is one of the things that people have speculated about. You can see these holes that have opened up on the roof as of 2022. Is that still intact above there currently or not? And that's obviously there's additional expeditions that have been underway and that are coming up, I'm sure. But that was the great controversy about whether they should recover the Marconi equipment or not, and if it's even accessible.
Yeah.
Was in the news a couple of years ago. That's
Well, it
the
may still
skylights.
be accessible, but you might have to wreck part of the roof to get to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I think nearly everyone would argue that damaging the wreck to get at that would be probably everyone could agree that's off limits.
So now we're looking down on the entrance to the grand staircase, and on the side you can see that the vestibules are pretty much gone.
Yeah, not much left. The back wall of the entrance is holding up better than the side walls, interestingly.
Mm-hmm.
Now on Olympic, the upright piano that the band played from was in the forward port corner, so I'll back us up so we can get a good view of it. It would be right there in that corner where the piano stood on Olympic. And if that's where it was on Titanic, then that's where Wallace Hartley and his men played for most of the disaster. Contrary to popular belief, they did not come out on this stretch of the deck during the sinking. They actually stayed inside the entrance until, what did George's research show, about 2 a.m.?
Somewhere around there,
Something like
yes.
that, yeah.
Now, this right here, if you can focus in on the forward bulkhead there, that, when the wreck was discovered, there's actually some close-up photographs. All the wood and paneling was gone, but there was almost the bulkhead was clean enough that you could actually see the outline of where the paneling had been. It was almost like a scar of where the clock panel would have been. Now you can no longer see that.
Also, at that point in time, parts of the roof were still up. Over to the left of the picture right now, you can see the roof has come completely down.
Yeah.
In the last 40 years.
Gentlemen, we're actually in the entrance. We're in the boat deck level of the entrance right now.
Can we go down one deck and see if some of those hanging lights are still there?
That's a good question. Let me change out to my outside view so I know exactly where the ROV is, because it's really realistic with this game. You can damage the ROV taking it into dangerous areas, and so we're between the boat deck and A deck here.
Well, I think
We haven't tried this before, so if something happens, it'll be just a good demonstration for everybody watching.
What not to do.
there's something hanging over toward the right.
Let's take a peek. I don't see any of the chandeliers here. Maybe that's one of the things that they plan to add in. Maybe.
Wait a minute. Go back a little bit. I saw something to
I wonder if
just
that's
a little
one.
bit more to your left. Just a little more to your left. Right, yeah, right there. Come around. See, you're pointing right at it.
Support column?
There's a column, but behind it, it looks like there's something that might be a light. Okay, now turn to your right. Right. Down. No, I guess not.
It could be too that this part of the model is not fully fleshed out,
Could be.
That could be, yeah.
like the more interior spaces. So
Yeah.
it'll be fascinating to see if they do add. Oh, there's
There's
something
one.
There's one.
That's one right there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Well, look at the destruction.
Oh,
I
there's
think that's another one,
Another
yeah. Yep.
Yep.
I
But
think-
compare this to the pictures that Ballard took. I mean, it's changed a lot.
Yeah. This is actually really remarkable to know.
Considering
Yeah.
they take those scans and then have to overlay them in a virtual 3D setting, and this isn't even a completed version yet. It's amazing.
My goodness. I remember one of Ken's paintings in Ballard's book of the ROV in the stairwell. Was it Ballard's book or was it an illustrated history?
Probably Ballard's, but I could be wrong.
Kind of like living that painting.
I say quite when you get down a little further with the depth, it looks like that's not fully.
Yeah.
But I also don't know if that was part of the scan they did that far down inside.
Yeah. May not be. It looks like some of the framework for the grand staircase there in front of us, or the dome. Probably, I think that's the staircase there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Knowing that this was such a busy spot during the sinking, the boat deck and A deck entrance, it's not just a feature of a ship. It's not just a feature of a wreck. It's not just how the ship was designed. It's knowing what happened here that really makes it stand out. Knowing the history, it's just incredible. And then, of course, would have been the clock and the carving here. Look over here and the band is playing. It reminds me of when we were in Pigeon Forge for the April broadcast this year in this space. Tantalizing hints of what's out there too. And of course, hearing the music of the White Star Line Quintet, as we're exploring the very area where Hartley and his men played. Wow.
If we're heading that way, I think what might be an interesting way to wrap up the exploration is if we fly right over the bow when you guys are ready.
Yeah.
Where you get that bird's eye view that you can't be very hard to see.
Yeah.
It did strike me, I think the lighting's, I mean, obviously with the way that some of the Cameron expeditions, when they had those giant lighting rigs that they lowered over the wreck, but normally it's very difficult to see.
You can see the holes opening up in the deck here. Thinner material. Wow. All right. Let's head forward here. Take us up over the number 1 funnel opening.
Until you get further forward, it's pretty clean looking at this point. I mean, it's not quite as rough looking, and then you start seeing where it's disintegrating as you go further forward.
Yeah. You really get a sense of how the height of the wreck changes when you're flying the ROV, and you have to keep compensating to stay close to the deck.
You actually get some of the feel of the size of the ship too.
Yeah.
The only place I was able to get that otherwise was on the Queen Mary.
There's the breakwater here. The number 1 hatch.
Of course, the hatch is far forward at the bow section, where it's apparently been knocked loose or blasted off when hit the bottom.
Yes, in fact, the hatch is, I believe it's been said, it's the furthest north piece of large debris separated from the bow. And it went out that way.
Was that a fish I just saw?
I
there?
saw it, I did.
The first time we've seen that. But yeah, it's interesting how that hatch was the most sturdy one, design-wise, and it sheared the bolts right off.
See some of the memorial plaques placed here on the capstans. Very much the recognizable Titanic that we're all familiar with.
Of course, the anchor.
Yep.
Look at all the seafloor that's been pushed up by the bow.
Almost looks like the ship is still sailing, in a way.
Yeah.
Wow. There she is.
Definitely the most recognizable portion of it. It'll be fascinating when they release the stern, because the stern is such a chaotic mess that it'll really be interesting trying to explore that in 3 dimensions.
Yeah, it will be. So, I think we've just about shown everyone everything that we wanted to show them from this. A little tease of what's in store. Of course, you could spend many hours exploring this beautiful beautiful experience that they've put together. And we hope you do. We hope you purchase it. The expansion packs will be coming throughout the year, according to their main page on Steam. So by all means, well worth the investment, both for entertainment and for research and historical analysis. Kind of feel like I'm down there right now. And of course, what's playing right now is Nearer My God to Thee, the actual version that they played on the ship that night. And
Fitting way to
yeah,
end our exploration. I said and that wasn't planned that way either.
no, it wasn't. So again, this is part of YouTube's tradition of Let's Play, where people will go in and they'll play a game live on YouTube. We aren't receiving any financial compensation for doing this, and the video is not monetized in any way. We're just hoping to draw some attention to this incredible game that was just released within the last couple of days. So we hope that everyone actually purchases it and can experience it for themselves. And with that, I'll let you guys bid farewell as I start the process of stopping the stream.
Thank everybody for joining in. If you purchase this, I think you guys will find it as interesting and rewarding to explore as we did. And as I said, we're thankful for our subscribers on the Steam Splendor Network. Please consider subscribing if you haven't, and we'll be in touch soon with some new content for you guys.
And thank you very much, Bill, for joining us.
Sorry my voice isn't holding up well. I really don't have anything to add to what Tad had and Ken had to say.
We really appreciate you being with us tonight. It's nice to have the three of us working together on this. So with that, we're going to say goodnight, and we hope you've enjoyed our first live stream here on the Steam and Splendor Network.